Recognize everyone's beautiful faces. And we are recording. So, welcome to our August Business Bites. We host Business Bites every second Monday of the month on a different topic. They're 30 minutes or less, depending on questions. Sometimes they go a little bit longer. They're always recorded. They're on our YouTube channel where we have, I think, 36 different videos on different topics. We were going to have a different topic this month about the Washington Cares Fund, which is long-term care insurance that W-2 employees pay out of their paychecks for Washington, but it's also available to small business owners. We moved that to September because we thought business insurance was going to be really important. Given the fires in Spokane and Stevens County, Whitman County this weekend and throughout Eastern Washington. This is not about business claims specifically or insurance claims, although we're happy to talk to you about that. This is really an overview about the kinds of insurance you can or should have and other considerations generally for business insurance. Oops. There we go. About Simba, we are the Spokane Independent Metro Business Alliance, which is a mouthful, and we work beyond Spokane. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We provide services to entrepreneurs, small businesses, and nonprofits. Our focus is always local, and we do that through organization, education, support, and advocacy, primarily education. So things like these workshops, which we host every month. We also do other workshops. We've got one coming up in September on accident prevention plans. Every single business in Washington that has employees, for-profit or nonprofit, must have a written accident prevention plan. More details about that are on our website. Our group trainings and workshops are always free. Our on-demand resource library that's on YouTube has about 36 different videos on different topics. That's always free and accessible. We run the Live Local INW directory marketplace. Last month, there were like 35,000 unique visitors. So if your business isn't on there, get your business on there. It's always sort of randomly unless you're a Simba member, and then you get priority listing for whatever category you're in. So whether people are searching women owned or the specific kind of business you are, the location, you're going to be at the top of that list. We offer free or low cost business consultations, membership, and all kinds of other resources. So let's talk about insurance, common business insurance types, more specifically for-profit entities at the start here. General liability. This is what people think about for most insurance. This protects your business from third-party liability. So vendors, customers, random persons who show up in your business or use your services for bodily injury. Nice typo on my part there. Property damage and advertising injuries. Advertising industries are very specific. So that's something you'll have to follow up with your insurer. The most common type of injury and the most common kind of insurance claim. It does not protect business owners directly. It doesn't protect business property. So if there was a fire and you lost business property, general liability does not cover that. It also doesn't cover claims impacting your employees, whether that they were injured themselves or their property was injured or they have a claim against their employer. So liability really protects third parties from accidents that occur at your business or accidents that occur because of your business or property damage for your business. So for example, construction industry, if you are completing a project at a client's home and you accidentally damage something else, this would be the insurance that would protect that. Professional liability insurance, often called errors and omissions or E&O insurance, protects service providers. So nonprofits and consultants, grant writers, lawyers, accountants, everyone has some version available to them of professional liability insurance. It protects your clients and customers from financial losses for real or alleged mistakes, negligence, and missed deadlines. It's going to vary by industry. Simba carries professional liability insurance. So if you have a consultation with one of us, you come to one of our workshops and you rely on our information and our information is incorrect, then you have recourse. If you are hiring a service provider, certainly always ask if they have professional liability. Some industries require it, like doctors. Some don't require it. Some it's optional. It's always worthwhile to ask. And if you're a service provider, I will say professional liability insurance is relatively low cost, depending on industry. It's a lot more money for a doctor than it is for a business consultant like Simba, but it's pretty low cost and provides a lot of protection as well. Commercial property insurance is what's going to protect your business property. So if there's a fire or a flood or a theft, that's the kind of insurance that is going to protect your real and personal property. All property is divided into two categories for the purposes of the law. Real property is building and lands. Personal property is everything else. And personal property can be physical property, so like computers and laptops. It could also be intangible, non-physical property, things like electronic files. Uh, it protects inventory, tools, equipment, anything owned by the business that is damaged. I really needed to check this a little better by fire, wind, floods, theft, or vandalism. I will note in certain places, there's exclusions for flood damage. For example, a lot of policies in the South where it floods more because they're subject to hurricanes and things of that nature have flood exclusions. There's often wildfire exclusions depending on where you are. Less so in Washington, more so in California, but I think there may be a change there. So always make sure what is included and not included in your commercial property insurance. Commercial property insurance is really inexpensive. I think our policy for the year is like $300. We don't have a lot of physical property at Simba, but especially if you're a service provider with not a lot of equipment, it is definitely worthwhile to protect that. Commercial auto, which can include non-owned auto, meaning vehicles used by your employees or your business owners that are actually your personal vehicles that are used for work. So it covers vehicle damages and third-party liability, bodily and property if there's an accident. If a company or personal work vehicle is involved in an accident while in company business or during the course of work. Again, Simba carries commercial auto. So our staff does outreach all over Eastern Washington, for example. So if we're driving and we get into a car accident or get a flat tire, it is covered by our insurance. If you have staff who's traveling or you want some extra coverage for your personal vehicle, it's definitely something to look into. If you have vehicles that you own for your business, definitely worth looking into. It's pretty expensive unless you're in a transportation industry, so trucking or like taxi. It gets a little more expensive because your vehicles are exactly what does the work for you. So that's often called fleet insurance when you own a bunch of vehicles, still commercial auto. Employee practices liability insurance, or EPLI, protects employers, not employees, against claims made by their workers, their former employees, and their job applicants who claim their legal rights were violated. I am going to update these slides before I send them out to folks. These cover legal defense costs, settlements, or court judgments if your employer sues you for some employee sues you as an employer for discrimination. And the reason there's job applicants listed is because job applicants can also make claims in most states for perceived or actual discrimination based on things like race or age. So be aware of that. Or if you violated a rule, like Washington is a ban the box state, so you can't put on an application a question about convictions or arrests. You can ask that later in the process, but it can be not be on an application. So that would also be something where that claim would arise. Exclusions include criminal or fraudulent acts by employers against employees, bodily injury or property damage, or prior known claims and lawsuits. And this is going to be true for all insurance policies, and I'll talk about it later. Buying an insurance policy today is not going to protect you from things that happened before the insurance policy went into existence. There's not retroactive insurance, there's proactive insurance. The reason there's common exclusions here for things like bodily injury or criminal or fraud is that there is workplace violence. There's actually an entire organization nationwide that protects people from workplace violence. And so if you're an employer and you physically assaulted your staff person, your insurance is not going to protect you from that. It's pretty wild, but it is actually a growing trend, which is even scarier. Workers' compensation, industrial insurance. Provides medical care and wage replacement to employees who suffer job-related injuries or illnesses. It is mandatory in the state of Washington if you have employees. It's also required for certain kinds of contractors in Washington, usually in construction fields. A few other areas provide. You can pay into state insurance where you pay part of it and your employee pays part of it. Large companies usually contract with third parties to handle their workers' compensation insurance, so it's employer provided. Those are really big industries. So think about folks like Kaiser. When you pay for that kind of insurance separately from the state insurance, you don't have to pay the state insurance, but that company also manages all of those claims for you. So other insurance options for small business, those are the most common ones. Business owner's policy, or a BOP. This is a bundle of general liability, commercial property, and business interruption insurance. Comes in a single package. And a lot of insurance companies will bundle these so it's cheaper and you don't have to pay a bunch of separate premiums. I think all of our insurance is bundled except for directors and officers insurance, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's specific to nonprofits. Cyber liability helps with recovery, legal fees, and notification costs in the event of a data breach, ransomware attack, or cyber crime. This is really important if you store private data. So if you're in like mental health or the medical field, it's also important if you have an online sales platform where you have people's financial information saved. Simba obviously takes payments from our customers, but it is through a third party. We don't actually have access to anyone's credit card informations or payment information on our platform, but it is something where this will help you pay for those kinds of things if you're storing a lot of data or if you have payment information. I will say cyber liability insurance tends to be expensive. I've gotten some quotes on it, and we've done an audit to make sure that our protocols are worthwhile and how our payment processing works, but it can be pretty expensive. And business income or interruption insurance is a specific kind of insurance that replaces lost profits and ongoing fixed expenses like rent or payroll if operations are temporarily stopped due to property damages. So this could be like getting evacuated for a fire. It can also be in situations where we have a couple business owners downtown and the building they're in was flooded a couple of times. It was their landlord's fault and the landlord's responsibility to handle the damages and do the work, but their businesses were shut down for up to a week at a time because they just couldn't seem to get the pipes fixed. So business income or interruption insurance will pay those lost profits or ongoing fixed expenses. It's really important for like a retail space, less important for folks who have inconsistent income. Again, it is something that if you're in a retail space or a restaurant, you're open every day, something you want to consider. Commercial umbrella just kind of provides a little of everything. So it's extra liability limits, again, typo, that kick in when standard policy limits are met in a major claim. These policies are usually very reasonable price, but they only supplement existing policies. So a common limit for an umbrella is $1 million. It kicks in after your other policies are exhausted. So if you had an auto accident on the job, work related, and it was more than the policy limits of your auto policy, and then you also had umbrella insurance, then the umbrella insurance would pick up the rest. So it's kind of like a everything else option. Oops. Some industry specific ones, rough one here, sexual abuse or molestation coverage is a specialized policy common for daycare, after school programs, and the like, providing legal defense costs and sometimes damages related to allegations of abuse against staff or volunteers. These kinds of claims are never covered under general liability policies. So if you work with children at all, nonprofit or for-profit, it's important to consider this kind of policy and to have procedures in place to make sure you are protecting against abuse. Liquor liability for bars and restaurants covers damages caused by intoxicated patrons. So if you have a really drunk patron at your bar or restaurant and you have liquor liability insurance and they break a table, this would cover it. It doesn't protect you from over-serving a patron. So if your claim is they were overserved, you're not protected. Assault and battery coverage, again, there's some rough ones here. It's really common for bars, especially for bouncers. Protects against lawsuits stemming from physical fights between patrons and staff, again, where alcohol is served. There has been some assault and battery coverage recently in medical facilities. I know the last time I went to the doctor, there were notes about not um, being kind and not tolerating abuse. And so if you're in a situation where people can be heated, again, most common in bars where we've got alcohol in play, that might be coverage you want. Contractors' small tools and equipment covers the cost to replace essential gear and tools of the trade for self-employed business owners. It's like a smaller commercial liability policy. It's a little cheaper usually, and it's for smaller tools and equipment. So hammers, wrenches, small saws, small electrical drills, not for large equipment. Some nonprofit specific insurance, because Simba works with nonprofits also. In addition to all the other policies which are available to for-profits, we have most of them. Directors and officers liability shields board members and leaders from personal financial losses if someone accuses them of mismanagement or wrongful decisions. Board members have to be acting in good faith. They can rely on experts like lawyers or accountants actually retained by the organization. So hired and paid for, doesn't cover fraud, doesn't cover times when a board member receives personal gain for the nonprofit, which they're not supposed to anyway, doesn't protect board members from bodily and property damages or prior litigation, but it does protect, let's say a board member makes a decision about a potential investment and they rely on an accountant and it turns out to be a bad investment, it protects them from that direct loss. So they can't be sued to have to pay the organization back. Volunteer and accident liability for nonprofits specifically, because only nonprofits and government entities in Washington can have volunteers. For-profits cannot have volunteers. Covers medical costs if an unpaid volunteer is injured doing mission work. So if you hire someone to do tabling, then they are covered. Special event insurance covers things like large public galas or festivals. For-profit businesses often use it as well if they are in the space to do like vendor markets or farmers markets. But it's really common for nonprofits to get some special additional insurance for these larger events and fundraisers, usually because alcohol is being served and there's other dangerous things potentially happening. Special event insurance is pretty inexpensive and can cover additional damages. Depending on who your vendor is, the location for your event, some vendors require it. Same for profits. Like most farmers markets require an insurance policy for their vendors in case there's like a windstorm or tabling or someone's damaged by like somebody's cookies or something they sell at the market. Those policies are usually pretty inexpensive. So some key considerations that apply to every kind of business and nonprofit insurance. Coverage is proactive. Insurance is not retroactive. There's some very limited circumstances if you've been a long time insured. That's pretty rare. You must have insurance in place before a claim arises. So you can't have a claim that arises and then get insurance and expect it to be covered. It doesn't work that way. You have a duty to inform your insurance. It's in every insurance policy, including your personal insurance policies, of a potential claim, not even an actual claim. So obviously we all know about informing our insurance about an auto accident. But if you have like a customer complaint, that seems like it's going to get escalated, especially if you're a service provider or you're doing construction, or if a third party says they're consulting a lawyer, you need to at least advise your insurance about possible claim. It doesn't mean they open a claim, it just means they make a notation. Failure to provide notice can actually waive coverage even on a valid claim. So always err on the side of caution. Your insurance policy is going to have information about who to contact about a potential claim. Know your exclusion. Not every policy covers everything. You could have exclusions for flood damage. You could have exclusions for wildfires. You need to know what those exclusions are because your insurance is going to deny them and you may want to look for coverage from another insurer. If you take away nothing from this presentation, take this away. Homeowners insurance does not cover business property, doesn't cover business claims, covers nothing for your business. Every homeowner's policy is going to exclude your business property. So if you have inventory, for example, of your business at your home, or you have a laptop that belongs to your business at your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover it. You cannot rely on that. Um, most homeowners insurance policies in the application process ask you if you're running a business out of your home or you work out of your home. If you are untruthful when you fill out that application, it can also mean your homeowner's policy can get covered. So do not rely on your homeowner's insurance to cover your business property. It will not. You have to have separate insurance. Um, so inventory, tools, equipment at home, you need to have additional commercial property insurance. If you have employees who have things like laptops and stuff and they're taking them home, you need to make sure that you're aware that your business insurance may or may not cover that, and you'll need to talk to your insurer about that specifically. Straightforward, but people forget, pay your premiums on time. And it's not always forgetting. It's things like when you get issued a new credit card, you forget to update it. We got some new credit cards issued automatically by our bank. Um, they Our cards were expiring. They had slightly different numbers, and I tried to remember everything that had a payment tied to it, but you forget after a while. So making sure you're paying premiums on time, because if your premium lapses, um, even if they're taking late fees or you're reinstated, you might not be covered for those 2 or 3 days. So if your injury or claim occurs in those 2 or 3 days, you might not have coverage. Understand your deductibles, know how much you'll need to pay out of pocket if a claim arises. Some policies have different deductibles within the same policy. So like our general liability policy has different deductibles depending on what kind of claim it is, flood versus theft, for example. So know your deductibles, know how much you're gonna have to pay out of pocket. And again, you still have to notify your insurance company, even if you're paying those deductibles. Some resources, our video library is free and on demand. This video will be uploaded later today, and we'll also email this out to everyone who came. All these links are live. Some of the consultations and memberships, information on that. We did create a resource on our website. There's a blog, and then there's a link on our resource page for businesses and nonprofits directly impacted by the wildfires. So if your business or your home were within evacuation zones in any of our Eastern Washington counties impacted by the fires, we've got free consults through the end of the year. We also have a bunch of resources on there. So if you know anyone impacted who runs a business out of their home, or their business was closed because of evacuations, especially in Spokane, but also Stevens, Whitman, and other counties, there's grants on there, there's lending, there's other kinds of resources, tools just for businesses. On our regular social media, we've been sharing resources for individuals specifically. Our workshop and events calendar is always up to date with things that we are hosting, things that our members are hosting, and then things that are relevant to business owners and nonprofits. Live Local INW is always a free resource for our businesses and nonprofits. There's an events calendar on there as well. You can add any of your events that you're having, even if it's a sale or promotion. Two other things about business insurance. The Hartford Small Business Insurance Guide has a really good overview about the kinds of insurance and when you may or may not want to use it. The other one is Ergo Next Insurance's Business Insurance Glossary. It's a dictionary of all the terms related to insurance. So if you don't know what a deductible means, or if you want to ask about first dollar defense, or you want to review one of these kinds of insurance, because they are often called different things and they mean the same thing, that glossary is really helpful. So it links to both of those. All of you know how to find us for workshops and help. So if you're a member, we don't require you to complete an intake. If you're a non-member, definitely send us an intake. If you've worked with us before, just send us an email. And I am going to exit out of this screen and stop sharing so I can answer any questions anyone might have about anything. And I see that you just saw that the grant writing org lost a square breach and lost a bunch of money. So that's something a cyber policy will cover. The cheapest I've seen a cyber policy is like $1,500 for the year.
Yeah,
General liability is usually pretty cheap. Our EPLI is bundled with our directors and officers. That's our most expensive insurance. Um, our umbrella insurance for a year is only $500 to provide an additional $1 million of coverage to anything. So a lot of these are pretty inexpensive. Business insurance, also for small business owners, is a tax write-off.
yeah, absolutely. No,
Definitely worthwhile in prioritizing, especially if you're in a business that has like a lot of equipment or inventory. I think about we work with so many makers and creators who do farmers markets, and they have candles and t-shirts and all the things, and a lot of them store them at home. So making sure you have coverage for that kind of thing. So we're here if you need us. We're happy to support you. We'll get this uploaded onto our YouTube. Alexis will follow up in the next couple of days. I will update the slides real quick with all my typos. It was a wild week preparing resources. And for those that don't know, I came back from a major surgery last week, so I'm a little slow. But we will get that uploaded and shared as we do with all of our workshops. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks so much.